me smokes, I'm no joke out the bullpen, bringing nothing but heat.
Welcome to Fluent and Chill. I'm Anthony K of Sports Fluent. I'm here as always with my main man, Jermaine from Chilltown Hoops. Jay, how you doing, man?
What's up, man? It's basketball season. We in the middle of it.
Listen, we're going to talk about some guys that are struggling, surprisingly struggling. Dame Lillard, James Harden. We're going to talk about some teams that are starting to pick things up a little bit. The Nets and the Lakers. And I want to talk about some surprise teams. So let's kick it off there. I'm going to start with one because you know where I'm living.
I do know.
Toronto Raptors upset the New York Knickerbockers on the anniversary, I believe. It might have been the day on the anniversary of the first NBA game. So let's give that history. 75 years ago, it was November 1st. Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, the Toronto then Huskies, were defeated by the New York Knickerbockers. The Huskies only lasted one season. However, that was the start of what we know now as the modern NBA, and it was between Toronto and New York. They played again last night, and coming off a big win against the Bulls, the undefeated at the time Bulls, we thought, okay, the Knicks, hey, here we go. I don't know, the Raptors look good. Here they are. They dropped, I believe, 11 points a game, points per game allowed from last year to this year, which I said, if this team's going to have any chance, it's going to be all those long, athletic, switchable forwards with some defense. I know you get asked a lot of questions about the Raptors. Is this like a legit kind of play-in game team here?
Well, I know it's early, and the first thing that I want to add is people get a lot of flack when you talk about teams early. people talk about teams early, and they get a little overexcited. However, I'm looking at this Raptor team, and they beat the Knicks at their own game yesterday. And I was excited about watching them. They just beat the Knicks up. They beat them up on the backboard. They beat them in transition. Fred VanVleet, I can't say enough about who he is. Fred VanVleet is the guy who doesn't look like much, but we need him.
Yeah.
He's the guy who you're looking at going, can he really play? But then once he starts playing, you go, I don't care who else is on the floor, and I don't care who else is in the rotation. He has to be in the rotation. We got to have him on the floor. Absolutely.
He reminds me of he's like the new version of their Kyle Lowry.
Yes.
Takes some bad shots, does some things sometimes that makes you scratch your head because you're like, he knows better than that. But then comes up big, can get to the hoop. For a guy his size, he can get to the hoop and finish. Right up below the rim, mind you, but still, he can knock down big shots. You know, there's a point in yesterday's game. I think it was like a 5-point game, and he pulls up a logo three, way short. Had he taken the extra step forward, it's in. But yeah, it's just like, but he does those things. He'll take the charge. He'll get the strip. He'll do those things that I remember when Kyle came over from Houston. There's a lot of, hey, he's going to be here for a year and then he's gone. But then you started to see those little things that don't show up, right? They don't show up on the scorecard that he does.
Yes, and that's exactly who this Toronto team is and what they're built on, man. I look at, I'm digging Boucher more and more, Tone. I wasn't really that big on him because he looked like, he could hula hoop a Cheerio. But that's what he looks like.
Right. That's about right.
That's what he looks like. But when I watch him, he's a dirty work guy. You know how I feel about dirty work guys, Tone? The guy sticks his nose in there. He blocks shots. He can rebound. He gets up and down the floor in transition. I like what this Toronto team is doing. And they didn't have Scotty Barnes yesterday.
He was out with a thumb injury, but they still look good.
I wasn't that big on Scotty Barnes getting drafted because I watched OG last night. And OG to me looks like he should be a starter on a playoff team. All right. And he looks like a number 2, maybe even a number 3 on a number 3, maybe even a number 2 on a playoff team. So I wasn't big on when they drafted Scotty Barnes, particularly because of nights like tonight when I saw OG. OG is a guy who I don't think he's a franchise player, Tone, but I think he's a big piece in what you're doing when you building your unit. You need a 3-man like that. And I think he's the consummate 3-man for you guys. The consummate. I don't know if VanVleet is your point guard of the future, but he's absolutely a guy that you have to have on the floor. And I love him. I love him. I love OG. When you get Siakam back and he's healthy, I think Siakam, when he comes back and he's healthy, because he had a shoulder issue. When he comes back and he's healthy, if he can hold up Toronto's right in the middle of this. Toronto's right in the middle of this playoff thing. Absolutely.
I really like OG. Reminds me of, obviously in the 90s we were watching a lot of Bulls games. He reminds me of like Scottie Pippen in the sense that he's going to give you 22 points a game, 6-7 boards, 5 assists, 4 assists, and plays defense. Like he's a great perimeter defender. Yes. And so that's that kind of do everything kind of guy that you're right. Does he lead a franchise? No. But if you have a legit scorer next to him and he's the 2 or 3 option, yeah, he's that you're in good shape if that's the case. So we go from them to the team that lost to the Knicks the other night, the Bulls. The Bulls are 6-1. We looked at New York as kind of for me, at the measuring stick. They lost that game. Is this just early success with the Bulls?
No, it's not. I think that the Bulls are starting to materialize as a legit team in the Eastern Conference. Before the season started, and you and I had this conversation, Tone, before the season started, I had them at 7 in the East. No, I had them at 8 in the East. And the reason why I had them at 8 in the East was, number one, I was concerned about their defense. And number two, I was looking at how stacked the Eastern Conference is. And, I mentioned this to you in the past that it reminds me of the West where, in a week, you could go from 3 to 9 because the third place team and the ninth place team is separated by 3 or 4 games. And it's that close. But when I look at this Bulls team, Tone, it was down 20 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and they came back and completely shut the door on the Celtics, who I'm going to get into in a minute because I am very disappointed in that unit. But
we're getting to that.
Yeah, we're gonna get to them in a minute. But this Bulls team, they're built on exactly what the Knicks. They look like what the 90s Knicks are built. They look like they're built on Chicago. They look like they're built on grit and grind. I love what Vooch is doing. I love him as a rebounder. Tone, there's plenty of times when the Miami had the big 3 of Bosh, Wade, and James, and Vooch would leave out of here with 20 and 24 boards. He would give Chris Bosh everything that he was looking for. So I remember him when he was in Orlando doing what he was doing. When I think about DeMar DeRozan, when I think about Zach LaVine, I know that these guys are buckets. When I look at Lonzo Ball, I know that this dude is a floor leader. I know that for a fact. That's not my question. The question was can these guys defend? And that's exactly what they're doing. Now, losing Pat Williams, that's going to be big. That's going to be big because he's their dirty work guy. So they got to make up for him. But guys like Alex Caruso, when they get Kobe White back, that's just going to enhance everything that they're doing now. DeMar DeRozan has already, he had 37 last night. He only missed 5 shots. We already know he's buckets, Tone. That's not news. We know who he is.
What an underrated player, right? I think
we know who he is.
Yeah. So
we already know that.
So we're gonna get to Boston, but I'm just gonna run down some teams and then we're gonna talk about Boston. But here's where we are today. I know it's early. But the Bulls are leading the East. Then you got Miami. Talk about defense. I think they're the only team in the East that's holding opponents to under 100 points. I think they're at 97 points per game is what they're allowing, which is what we figured. When you got Lowry and Bam and Butler on a team, you're going to be good. You're going to be good defensively.
When they get Victor Oladipo back, it's going to be even better. So
that team is the one. Again, health is always the question. If they're healthy, I think they're the scariest team. Then you got the Knicks. The surprising team that's in the number 4 spot, Washington, who we thought I said Kuz is going to be the most improved player this year. I thought that they would be fun to watch, but not necessarily win games. And that's what I thought.
When you said Kuz, I thought that you had an extra thing of vodka in that cup. When you said Kuz being most improved, I was convinced. I said that.
Preseason, yeah.
Before the season started, when you said that, I'm thinking he's slipping himself to a little bit more vodka in that coffee. That ain't just coffee in that cup. That's some vodka in there too.
That might still be true, but yeah.
But I tell you what, man, I think you're correct on that. Kuz is looking really good.
Surprised to Washington. Philadelphia, still 5-2, even with the whole. I'm actually impressed when you have the Ben Simmons issue, and they're still 5-2. So I promised everybody we're gonna get to Boston, but I'm just gonna ask you quick kind of rapid fire questions as we go down this list of teams. Do you see Simmons playing for Philadelphia this season, or does he get traded? You could just pick one. You don't have to give us the why. He plays for Philadelphia or gets traded.
I think he plays, and
he plays in Philadelphia.
I think he plays, and then he gets traded.
Okay, so hold on. So does he get traded this season before the trade deadline?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So Simmons out. I could see. Yeah, I could see that too. Look, you got title aspirations. You can't get it with that this way. Mm-hmm. All right. Toronto, we already talked about. Charlotte is the other team who I said, hey, they're going to be pretty good. Maybe LeVar was onto something. You know, we all laughed at him and said, you're nuts. I don't know. His boys are playing pretty good.
And his youngest boys look like he's the best one of all three of them. He looks like he's the best of all. And I love.
Isn't that always the case? Isn't that always? Listen, I'm the third of three boys, and clearly I'm the best. So,
well, Eli wasn't better than Peyton, but that's we.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's a different subject. But when I look at this Charlotte team, Tone, I've said to you in the past, I look at Haywood being the linchpin. If Haywood could stay healthy,
yeah.
If
you said that, yeah.
I think that they're a top 5, top 6 team in the Eastern Conference. I do think that.
If they finally make the playoffs and maybe make some noise, do we get off Jordan's back for being a bad executive?
No, Tone. You want me to tell you why? I'm going to tell you why right now, Tone. Okay, this is why I'm going to tell you why. Because he actually, who Jordan is right now, is Jordan's been the guy who's been complaining about meeting a girl. Okay, he finally met a really nice girl. Now you got to take care of her.
Yeah, now you have to take care of her. We got to see how he does. Yeah, fair enough.
Now you got to take care of her. So
a shout out to Mr. Jordan. Do not go to practice. Do not beat ball in a game of 1-on-1.
Mike.
Do not talk trash to him. Don't kill his confidence. Please.
No, Mike. Stay away.
Because you know, it's gonna be, LeVar's gonna say like, my boy's better than Mike. Mike's gonna be like, oh yeah, Mike. I took that personal.
Mike.
And and let's be honest, I'll take Mike in a 1-on-1. Even today at however old, 60 years or however old he is, I'm still
57, taking. I think Mike is 57. Mike, do not
leave it. Yeah, leave it.
Stop,
leave it.
Mike, please.
All right, so Charlotte's a surprise. This team's not a surprise that they're in the playoffs. Obviously, the surprise that they're the 8th seed, but the now 4-3 Brooklyn Nets, won a couple of. I think they've won 2 in a row now. Mm-hmm. They're starting. So let's pause there with James Harden. Mm-hmm. Is James Harden? Is it the rule changes? Is it he's just taking his time to kind of get into the flow of things? Is it him kind of being the point guard and he's trying to facilitate too much? Why do you think the slow start in terms of his scoring, his everything he's doing?
Well, 2 things. Thing number 1, Tone, he's playing himself into shape. So he's always done that. And I haven't been a big fan of that of him. I've never been a big fan of that of him. The fact that he doesn't take care of his body the way he should, and he comes into camp out of shape. He's done that routinely, which would explain why he, number 1.
Well, last year they thought he was wearing a fat suit. Remember the whole?
Let me ask you real quick, Tone. Before the season started, when you saw him in Houston, in that preseason game, how heavy did you think he was?
Like 250.
I thought I was at 240. I was at 240. So I'm thinking he's at least 20 pounds overweight, at least. You know how difficult it is to just gain 20 pounds? Like
I have no problem gaining 20 pounds. My problem is losing 20 pounds. But I know that.
You know how difficult that is, though? Come on, man. You have to be doing nothing, especially as a professional athlete, to just put on 20 pounds. So his conditioning has always been an issue, which will explain why he runs out of gas at the end of the season and why he's hurt so frequently. Add that to the fact that he's getting older, Tone. I think he just turned 33.
It's time to take, the older you get, the more you got to take care of your body.
So it's catching up to him. That's number 1. Number 2, a huge part of his game is him getting to the stripe. Tone, over the last 5 years, he's averaged 10, almost 11 free throws a game. That's down to 7 now. So we're talking about almost half. That's almost cut in half. So now he's got to play through contact. He's got to switch up his game because he relies on that. So him having to be more of a distributor, which he can do, him having to be more of a playmaker, which he can do that. But with him not getting to the stripe as much, that's completely altering his game.
Right.
And it's going to take some time for him to adjust. There's a lot of guys that are having that problem. Trae Young's having that problem. Steph is having that problem. A lot of guys are having that problem where they now have to play through contact. And this has been an issue for him, and it's going to take him some time in addition to him getting back in basketball shape. Now, you already know who, as my buddy would call him, the natural. We already know who he is, and we know how good Kevin Durant can score the basketball. My issue with Brooklyn, and I've said this in the past, Tone, who is their meat and potatoes guy? Who is their dirty work guy? Who's cleaning glass in Brooklyn? Who's rim protecting in Brooklyn? Who's diving on the floor for loose balls? Who's the guy that's in the huddle asking, can you score the rest of the points? I'll deal with 33. Who's that guy? Because there's no PJ Tucker on that team. There's no DeAndre Jordan on that team. So who's that guy? Because that's going to be a problem. I can appreciate losing Kyrie Irving and losing 25, 26 a game. You still need those dirty work guys, and they don't have them.
I think we don't talk enough about them because when you look at the stats, they don't pop out. But every team, every championship team, if you go back through history, you will find there's a guy or two that will lock down a defender. They'll dive on the ground for those loose balls. They'll, like you say, they'll do that dirty work. You have to have, as good as your superstars are, if you don't have the role players around them, it doesn't matter. Stars are great, but they're nice, they're good. You need them, but but I think we forget you also need the role players because they work off of each other.
Yeah.
So then we get into a couple of teams that we thought were going to be in the playoff race and some that we obviously didn't. So Atlanta, I think Atlanta's do you think the rule change you mentioned Trey? Well, not get into the line as much. Do you think is that the biggest thing in Atlanta?
Well,
again, it's early. Look, we're 7 games in.
I don't think it's just that, Tone. Well, you're not sneaking up on nobody now. Everybody's prepared for you. But last season, teams weren't really taking these guys serious. Now they look at Atlanta. Trae Young is one of the best point guards in the game. John Collins is one of the better foremen in the game. Clint Capella led the league in rebounding second in the league in rebounding last year. So they got I think they had 6 guys last season that averaged double figures. Cam Reddish is actually blossoming into a player if he could stay healthy. So they're not sneaking up on anybody, Tone, and that's the difference now. And now they have to raise their level of play, and they got to raise their game even higher because they're not sneaking up on anybody.
I think people underestimate how hard it is to be a good team year after year, and Atlanta just has to look at their own history. If you remember, when they had, I think they had 4 All-Stars out of their 5 starters were All-Stars, and they had the best record in the East. And then the next season, I don't think they didn't do anything, right?
Again, they didn't make the playoffs. I don't think they got swept in the East.
I was going to say, and that's the thing. They weren't a surprise anymore. Then you got Cleveland, who's actually surprisingly not bad at 500 at 4-4, but the Milwaukee is the next one. Middleton out, kind of in and out, COVID, whatever he's got going on. But the Bucks, what are you seeing in the Bucks? Is it?
I've seen them decimated. That's what I've seen. No Middleton, no Lopez, no Drew Holiday. That team is decimated by injuries right now. I watched them a couple of nights ago against Utah. They look like their G League team with Giannis. And
is this dangerous to put Giannis out there and kind of have to carry the load with a bunch of injuries, or
no?
He's good, right?
Yeah, I think he's fine. And this is a part of it, Tone. This is a part of being in the NBA where, you're going to have to deal with injuries and you have to play through a lot of this stuff. Now, I can't concern myself with Giannis being potentially in danger of being hurt because he's not going to play if he's going to play like that, if he's worried about getting hurt. And that's not going to help us. But once they get healthy, once Drew gets healthy, once Middleton gets back healthy, once Lopez, I think that this team, and losing PJ Tucker, I've said this in the past, Tone, you can lose him to Toronto, you can lose him to Sacramento. He cannot walk out the front door to Miami, man. That just can't happen.
Yeah, a team that's probably going to be one of your.
You might see them in the East Finals,
or in the East Finals.
You might see them in the East Finals, in the East semifinals. You can't have this dude walk out the front door to them. That's like your Lakers, Tone. That's like Robert Horry walking out the front door to San Antonio. Oh, wait a minute, he did do that, didn't he?
Yeah, it happens. It happens. All right, so now I know you've been chomping at the bit to talk about the 2-5 surprise to all of us. I had them, I think, as a 5th or 4th seed, and they're 2-5. The Boston Celtics don't look good, and they're too talented. They are too talented even this early to be 2-5?
I think that we have established some guidelines and we've established some roles. And the problem is that, and I said this to you before, Tom, we still haven't figured out who we writing the songs for. Who is the lead singer here? Okay. We already know who the backup singers are, and we got the dance routine down. Who are we writing the songs for? It looks like Tatum and Jaylen Brown are doing this while the routine's going on. We have to get these guys to establish which one is going to be the guy and who's going to take the back seat at what particular time. Because, it took a lot, Tone, for Scottie Pippen. Even as good as Jordan was, it took a lot for Scottie Pippen to go, you know what? You're the guy. I'm going to step back. And I'm going to let you do what you do. And I'm going to do everything that you don't do in addition to what I do. That's how I'm going to make this team better. It takes a lot to do that, as opposed to Scottie saying, well, I'm just as good as Jordan. And I'm going to take shots just like Jordan does. And I'm going to do everything that Jordan does. At some point, when you got championship aspirations or making a deep run in the playoffs, somebody you have to establish who the guy is. So who is the guy on this team? And once we get to that point, Tone, we have to stand on it. We know who Marcus Smart is. We know who Robert Williams is. We know who Richardson is. We know who Schroeder is. We know who all of these guys are. You two guys are the issue. Which one of you guys is the guy?
So let me throw out a couple of things at you, because one, there is a downside of this, because you could pick the wrong guy. And I'll give you an example.
Right.
In 2011, LeBron said, hey, I'll be the bigger guy and I'll step back and let Wade be the leader of the Miami Heat because that's his team. And that didn't work, right? We all know what happened. That did not work. The other problem is, or another example is, I'm going to go back to Toronto. They had once upon a time had Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and Rudy Gay. Mm-hmm. And they were like, this isn't working. They couldn't win a game. And they said, hey, you know what? We're going to blow Masai Ujiri in his first stint with Toronto before he went to Denver and then came back. Mm-hmm. He said, okay, you know what? We're going to blow this up. Or it might have been his second stint. Don't quote me on that one. But anyways, so he says, all right, I'm going to start by trading away Rudy Gay. And he trades Rudy Gay, I believe, to San Antonio. No, maybe Sacramento. I don't know. Anyways, he trades away Rudy Gay. And he gets a bunch of what we think pieces back. Do you know what happens when they trade away Rudy Gay? It's clear that now it's DeMar's team as the scorer and Kyle Lowry is the point guard. And now there's no, like with Jalen, I don't think they're on the same level as obviously Jalen and Jason Tatum. However, there's no more of this. It's like, okay, it's not Rudy, it's DeMar's team. They all of a sudden start winning games. They win so many games that now Masai can't blow it up because now they start winning more games than any other team in the league. And then for a stretch, right, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. They're losing to LeBron every year, but they are the first or second seed every season.
Right.
And then they make the trade for DeMar for Kawhi. But before that, it was that trade. Right. It was almost like addition by subtraction. So the reason I bring that up, because I'm about to say something crazy, should they trade one of these guys away for a bunch of pieces and make it that? Let's say they trade Jaylen Brown. His stock will never be higher. You can get some quality pieces back, some draft picks, and now it's Jason. Let's build around Jason Tatum. Or I think this might be blasphemy because I think Jason Tatum's an MVP caliber player in the next couple of years. Do they trade away Jason Tatum? Say, okay, Jaylen Brown's our guy. I don't know. Personally, I would go with Tatum. Is that maybe something?
That's not ridiculous. And I was absolutely alluding to that unless we establish, because again, when you got two guys who do virtually the same thing.
Right. It's not like LeBron and AD or Harden and KD. Those guys they're great, but they're great in different places, which is what you need.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they're thinking the same thing, that at some point we have to establish who the guy is. And if we don't have that, we're gonna start tearing at the fabric of the team. Now, I can appreciate Marcus Smart saying, all right, these guys are young, they're growing into themselves, sure. But with that being said, we still got to establish who the guy is. And if we can't, one of us shouldn't be here. Because what it's going to do, it's going to keep, because now what we're going to have, what we're going to ultimately have, Tom, is we're going to have a division, like in football, where you should be the starting quarterback. No, you should be the starting quarterback. Well, now we have an issue with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, where now we got guys on the team saying, you should be the man. No, Jalen, you should be the man. No,
when the dressing room is divided,
that's a problem.
Chemistry's tough, it's important for sure.
That's a huge problem. So we got to get to the bottom of, number one, who the guy is. And once we get to the bottom of who the guy is, whoever the guy isn't, you have to accept what it is that your role is. You have to.
So we can go in two different routes now.
Mm-hmm.
We can either save the Western Conference for next week, or we can go through the Western Conference.
Let's keep him on the hook.
All right. So next week, we're going to go through the Western Conference. Same thing. Obviously, the standings will probably change a little bit, give you some insight on the Western Conference. But before we go, and the reason I asked that question, I got a question for you. And this has nothing to do with basketball. But I'm curious. For those of you that don't know, I hope I'm not, if I'm speaking out of school here, just let me know and I will edit this out. You're a vegan.
I am.
So I got two questions. One, have you tried Trader Joe's vegan ribs? Because I did, and they're fantastic.
No, I haven't.
You should. I had a barbecue. I had a barbecue, and a friend of mine was vegan, and he said, "You got to find me something." So I went to Trader Joe's, and I found these vegan ribs, and he actually got mad at me. He thought I gave him real ribs because that's how delicious they were. And I said, "They can't be that good." And I tried them, and they were fantastic. Mm-hmm. So that being said, I want to know kind of what inspired this decision. Because I've been thinking about it. I want to, get, healthy. I want to, all these things. So I'm curious.
I've been an athlete, for the majority of my life, and I work out a lot. So in addition to me working out, there's a certain feeling that I have, and I just wasn't feeling good. And I was trying to make sense of why am I not feeling good? And I ended up watching a documentary about food and what food does to people. And this wasn't, a situation where I'm I want to save the animals or anything like this, or, don't wear mink coats. No. I don't get into nonsense like that. It was just me not feeling good and trying to figure out why. So I watched this documentary on Netflix. It was called What the Hell? I watched it and I'm thinking, maybe I'll give this a try just to see what it is. So I'm going to cut out everything in terms of no meat, no dairy, and no animal byproducts. So that includes.
So we're talking everything. no fish, no beef,
none of that. So I cut it all out, and turns out I ended up dropping 25 pounds. My cholesterol dropped like 80 points. This is the best that I've felt in my life, Tony. And I'm talking like when I was playing basketball, when I was 20, 21 years old. This is the best that I've ever felt. I can't imagine going back to what I was doing. I feel great. And this wasn't me again saying,
right. It wasn't for I don't want to say a purpose, but right. No purpose greater than yourself. It was just, hey, right. I don't feel good, so I'm going to try something new to make myself feel good.
That was
so what is it? Just fruit, vegetables, tofu? Like
what I eat, what I eat. No tofu. I don't do the tofu. And
you can tell I don't know. That's why I'm curious.
Kale and all of that nonsense. So my diet consists of like I said, I don't no dairy. So I eat dry raisin bran, and that's bran flakes with raisins in it. The raisins are separate. I eat that, and then I make a rice dish with green beans, tomatoes, onions, spinach, potatoes. What else? It's a really good rice dish. And then I also make a pasta dish, because a lot of people say you shouldn't eat carbs. Do not listen to that at all. That's nonsense. In fact, what you do when you eat carbohydrates, two things happen. So you either store it or you burn it. So it's not something that's going to, because you need it, to the nutrients in it, you need it for your body. So I have a pasta dish where it's wheat pasta, and I'll have spinach, broccoli, just stuff like that. And, yeah. and it's just really good. It's really good for me, and I just feel a lot better.
Do you ever miss bacon cheeseburgers?
Well, I tell you what, Tone, when I first started it was like, to be honest with you, I would smell, a big, I don't care where I'm at. I would smell pizza. I would smell I'd smell a bacon cheese. I'd smell wings. And it was, I had done it. It was at the end of the summer. So it was right around when football season was starting. So everywhere I went, I just felt like I was smelling barbecue chicken. I felt like I was smelling, buffalo wings everywhere I went. I was like, yo, focus, man.
You could still have a pizza. Like you could have dough, tomato sauce, and like veggies on it. Like you could technically
you could do that, but I haven't done that.
Yeah, there you go. You should try it. Between that and Trader Joe's vegan ribs, I've just hooked you up with a couple of meals. All right, I was just curious.
Yeah, man.
I was just, like I said, I'm getting to that point where I'm starting to look at things. So I was curious. So
yeah, man.
Thank you for sharing that. That's it for this week of Fluent and Chill. If you haven't already, subscribe. I think the button's there actually. Subscribe. Don't forget to check us out on TikTok live every Monday at 8 p.m. And then on Fridays, the NFL edition. So let me just say, this week's NFL edition is going to be big because trade deadline on Tuesday. We're going to talk about the trades that did happen, the trades that should have happened. Next week on the NBA edition, we're going to go through the Western Conference. So until next week.
Take it light, but take it.